Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Honestly, I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we are going to unpack a truly fascinating framework for looking at the world around us. We'll be taking a highly objective, detailed look at how Marxist theory views the modern media landscape. So whether you're completely new to sociology and media studies, or you're just looking for a solid refresher, you are exactly in the right place. We're going to break down some pretty dense academic concepts into clear, easy takeaways. Get ready, because you might just start looking at your daily news feed in a totally new way.
I want you to start by asking yourself this very simple yet highly provocative question. Seriously, think about it for a second. Is the media neutral, or is it a tool for control? Think about the articles you skimmed this morning, the videos you swiped through on your phone, or that news broadcast playing in the background at the gym. Are you simply being handed pure, unfiltered facts? Or is the content you consume daily carefully curated to shape exactly how you view society? Keep that question right in the back of your mind as we go through this.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our agenda for today. First up, media as ideological control. Number 2, creating a false consciousness. 3, hegemony and common sense. 4, mechanisms of media power. And finally, number 5, criticisms and counterarguments.
All right, starting with Section 1, Media as Ideological Control. We're looking at the base and superstructure model.
To really grasp this core Marxist premise, you have to look at society as being split right down the middle into two parts, the economic base and the superstructure. So, the economic base consists of the actual means of production. We're talking factories, businesses, concentrated wealth, and this is controlled by the ruling class. The superstructure, well, that includes pretty much everything else: education, the legal system, religion, and critically for us, the media. The big Marxist argument here is that whoever controls that economic base inherently controls the superstructure. By holding the purse strings, the ruling class uses institutions like the media to promote ideas that justify their power and basically maintain the status quo.
That brings us to a specific and frankly fascinating term, ideological state apparatus. This was coined by the philosopher Louis Althusser. In this framework, the media isn't just a simple business, it's an apparatus. It's an engine designed to transmit the ideology of the ruling class, but it does so in subtle, highly persuasive ways. Through our daily news reporting, entertainment, and advertising, the media essentially acts as a gentle persuader, subtly encouraging the public to accept capitalism not just as an economic system, but as something entirely natural, perfectly fair, and absolutely inevitable.
Moving on to Section 2, creating a false consciousness and how values shape perception.
The Marxist perspective suggests that the media heavily and constantly promotes several very specific values. We're talking meritocracy, individualism, consumerism, and competition. Now, why these specific values? Well, think about it. If you believe heavily in pure individualism and meritocracy, then you naturally believe that success is merely the result of personal effort. And the flip side to that is believing that failure is purely a personal fault. By constantly championing these values, the media effectively makes societal inequality appear totally legitimate. It suggests that, hey, if someone is wealthy, they just worked harder, completely ignoring any systemic or structural advantages they might have had.
And this brilliantly illustrates how that theory plays out in the headlines. Take a look at the stark contrast in framing here. Marxist critics point out that media coverage of poverty almost always focuses on the individual's lack of skills or poor choices, framing it as a personal individual failing. Conversely, when workers go on strike to demand better conditions, the news reporting frequently frames that strike as disruptive behavior, or a massive nuisance to the public. That specific framing pushes audiences to sympathize with the employers and the status quo rather than with marginalized groups or labor movements who are just fighting for a larger share of the pie.
The ultimate result of all this framing, it's what Marx famously called false consciousness. It's defined as preventing the working class from recognizing their own exploitation. Think of it like this. If the media successfully keeps the public laser-focused on individual failings and consumer competition, people are way less likely to look up and recognize the massive structural disadvantages of the economic system they actually live in. It essentially blinds the very people who are disadvantaged by the system from seeing how the whole shebang actually operates.
Which brings us to Section 3, Hegemony and Common Sense. This is Gramsci's deeper layer of cultural power.
So Gramsci asked a really pivotal question. How exactly does a ruling class stay in power without just using the military or the police? He contrasted coercion, which is ruling by sheer force, with consent, which is ruling by cultural acceptance. Gramsci proposed that ruling class dominance in modern societies relies heavily on public consent. It's way cheaper and, honestly, far more effective to get people to willingly agree to the social order than it is to force them at gunpoint. And how do you manufacture that consent? Through cultural institutions, and above all else, the media.
Gramsci called this manufactured consent common sense, and this is a vital concept in media hegemony. Hegemony works by shaping the very boundaries of acceptable thought. It literally dictates what issues are taken seriously, how they're talked about, and which voices are even allowed to be heard on a broadcast in the first place. Over time, the ideas of the ruling class are repeated so often across so many platforms that they cease to look like an ideology at all. They just feel like everyday, unquestionable common sense.
So, the crucial point is that hegemony is never actually complete. It has to be continually renewed and defended. It isn't just some static victory where the ruling class wins once and goes home. Because people experience real, everyday hardships and inequalities, there will always be pushback. Therefore, the media is an active, ongoing battleground for ideas. The dominant narrative has to constantly be reinforced, updated, and defended against any alternative ways of thinking. All right, Section 4, Mechanisms of Media Power. Let's look at the practical tools of control.
There are 4 primary tools that act as the gears of this ideological machine. First up, agenda setting. This isn't just telling you what to think. Actually, scratch that. It's more about telling you what to think about. By dominating the front page, the media decides which issues actually matter. Second is gatekeeping. This is the rigorous filtering process where editors and owners ensure only certain safe perspectives ever reach your screen. Third, we have norm setting. This is how the media praises certain conformist behaviors while heavily criticizing others, keeping societal actions in check. And finally, moral panics. By creating exaggerated, sensationalized fears, say, around youth crime or immigration, the media can justify increased social control and literally push the public to rely on the dominant authorities for safety.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5, Criticisms and Counter-Arguments, Challenging the Marxist Paradigm.
Now, there are 3 major schools of thought that challenge this strict Marxist view. Pluralists completely reject the idea of an imposed ideology. They argue the media is simply responding to market demand. In their view, if audiences want a certain type of news, companies provide it to make a profit, meaning the consumer is the one with the real power. Postmodernists, on the other hand, take a different angle. They argue that today's digital media landscape is way too fragmented, decentralized, and interactive for any single dominant ideology to control us, viewing the audience as active participants who construct their own meanings. Finally, neo-Marxists offer a somewhat softer critique, suggesting that while ownership definitely matters, journalists are actual people with professional autonomy, meaning hegemony is constantly negotiated, not just rigidly imposed from the top down.
Even with those valid criticisms, the Marxist perspective remains highly relevant today. Regardless of where you happen to fall on the political spectrum, we all have to acknowledge the undeniable reality of media consolidation. A remarkably small number of massive corporations absolutely dominate global media ownership. Because of that unequal distribution of power, the Marxist lens is an incredibly useful tool for helping us spot the subtle ways that ideology, framing, and gatekeeping continue to shape public consciousness.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Next time you're endlessly scrolling through your feed, reading an article, or watching a news broadcast, ask yourself, who is truly shaping your common sense? Are your views entirely your own, or are you operating within the boundaries set by someone else's superstructure? Keep questioning, keep looking deeply at the media you consume, and thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.